Wonderful. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I told Chris when he got here that tonight he is up against President Biden, Bruce Springsteen, and the band, and temporarily it looked like rain. So I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight and virtual audience for joining us. And it's lovely to see Chris again, who was last here for the Lioness.
Right. Barbara, it's wonderful to be back, and it's wonderful to be back on Poisoned Pen TV.
Which is really, we think of it as book flicks, you know.
Perfect.
It is.
Perfect.
No, it actually is. And I'm very grateful to all the people who stay home in their jammies and watch us and buy books, which is the critical part. Anyway, this is an interesting book in terms of the timing because probably some of you have read about Cakegate or, you know, the fake. And then, so that all happened after Chris had read the book, and so obviously doesn't play into it. It's just kind of a fortuitous coincidence that it's happened at the moment. But I wonder, Chris, because, you know, you love writing about mostly women put in different time periods and in extremely difficult situations. What inspired you to go to Las Vegas and write about a woman who's basically a fake princess?
A fake princess, indeed. The Princess of Las Vegas. When I think of this book, I really do view it as the TV series Hacks meets the TV series The Crown,
Right.
or Ocean's 11 meets The Queen. I wanted to explore three things.
Okay.
Las Vegas, that fiery meteorite that shoots across the night sky, that phantasmagoric funhouse for the damaged and dreamers alike. My wife and I actually renewed our wedding vows in Las Vegas a couple years ago at the Little White Chapel. Michael Jordan, Joan Collins, J-Lo, Ben Affleck, Chris and Victoria. And everyone, once in their life, deserves to see the love of their life, their soulmate, walked down an aisle by Elvis Presley, singing Love Me Tender with a really tight karaoke machine as the band. It was glorious. So I wanted to explore Vegas because, I mean, it's got such a fantastic history. A history built on criminality. A history built on dreams.
Okay, can I interrupt you and say, do you know how much of that is based in Phoenix? This
I
is
don't.
where they came. In order to build Las Vegas, there is a whole history. And have you been to Durant's, for example, downtown? Durant's is where those guys hung out. It's still there. It looks like, do you remember the Russian Tea Room in its heyday?
I had brunch at the Russian Tea Room with Steve Lawrence and Edie Gourmet in its heyday.
so
I'm
you
not, that's how
remember
old
it.
I am.
I once sat next to Lauren Bacall and Roddy McDowell, although I didn't know them personally. It was just a function of the seating. But the Russian Tea Room at one point had some of the world's most, what do I want to call it? Tinsel-y, remember, decorations?
Yes.
It aired on the side of over-decorated now. So if you go to Durant's, for example, around Christmas, it's as though the Russian Tea Room has been reincarnated. But what happened was the Chicago outfit sent guys out here. There was no Las Vegas. So they came to Phoenix, and this is where they began to plan Las Vegas because it's really a community that, you know, was built post the war, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no there there. So there was there here, and therefore there's that whole connection.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
And I
no,
did a
it's
lot of Las
fascinating.
Vegas homework.
Yeah, well, you missed the Phoenix connection.
I did miss the Phoenix connection.
Right.
Yeah.
So we sort of feel, you know, some responsibility maybe to Las Vegas.
Take pride in it.
Right. It's what, an hour plane ride? You can drive it, you know, if you drive up west past Hoover Dam and all. So Phoenicians often commute to either Las Vegas or San Diego, right? Depending on what your reward system is. You go to San Diego in the summer for the beaches and all the rest of it. And you can go to Las Vegas to celebrate things as what you're talking about. So it's almost like adjacent.
I love that. Well, I love Phoenix too. And maybe I need to set a book in Phoenix, a prequel. So I wanted to explore Vegas, but I also wanted to explore Diana. Why is this remarkable woman still in the zeitgeist over a quarter of a century after her death in a cataclysmic car accident in a Paris tunnel? And there are a lot of reasons for that. The first, certainly we thought her life was going to be a fairy tale. And if it was a fairy tale written not by Disney, but by Grimm. Secondly, she was an amazing showwoman. This is a human being who was dancing at the Reagan White House with John Travolta just before midnight in November 1985, and then, a month later, was dancing at the Royal Opera House with Wayne Sleep, Britain's premier male ballet dancer, to Billy Joel's Uptown Girl to surprise Charles on his birthday. She knew what she was doing. And third, for all of her flaws, she was a fundamentally decent human being. This is a woman who was reaching out to men dying of AIDS when no one else would in the 1980s, to human beings damaged, disfigured, or dying from landmines in the 1990s. And fourth, and this is, I think, the main reason why Diana is still in the zeitgeist, the Windsors thought they had found the perfect kitten for Charles, but she was a lioness. She beat them in the media at their own game. So I wanted to explore Diana, and if you think that Lady Di in Las Vegas is a really weird cocktail, think again, because the only Princess Diana museum in the United States is in, wait for it, Las Vegas. Yeah.
So I can tell you that some years ago when I was in Lima, Peru, you're leaving out something I think is really important. She was an incredible, she was camera ready. The camera absolutely loved her. And she was iconic in terms of a subject for photography. And my daughter and I were in Lima, and there was a huge advertisement, billboards all over. This was like 5 or 6 years ago. It was an entire show, traveling show, dedicated to photographs of Princess Diana. And I mean, it was room after room of iconic photographs. And so, her image, I think, people were more familiar with her image than they were with her as a person.
I think so. And how good and how smart was she about that image, knowing when to tip off the paparazzi and when not. All of those haunting photographs of her on Dodi Fayed's yacht from August of 1997. The kiss, the one of her in the blue bathing suit at the end of the diving board, all alone, as if she's on a pirate ship about to walk the plank. Well, it's highly likely that she was the one who tipped off the paparazzi. This is when I'm going to be on the diving board. This is when I'm going to be on the boat. Everyone thinks that it was Dodi Fayed's father who was the puppet master, but Diana was pulling a lot of strings.
And it's too bad that social media came along a little too late.
Oh, she would have crushed on Instagram.
I know, she would absolutely have crushed it.
There would be no Kate Gate if Diana was still alive, because she would have coached her daughter-in-law on how to Photoshop an image so that you don't accidentally take off your wedding band.
Yes, no, all those things. And yet, on the other side of it, she was a really good mother. She spent time, taking her children to do ordinary things. I mean, both her boys, really loved her. I mean, she was, so she was, no person is any one thing, but she was an amazing number of things, I think, more than the average person. And
I
then
think she was
died
remarkable.
when she was like 35, right? So,
pardon me?
how old was she when she died? 32, 35?
36.
36, okay,
36.
close.
Yeah.
Right. So, that's a huge meteor to flash and then disappear into the universe so young.
Oh, I think Diana was wonderful. And one of the reasons why I did not write historical fiction about her, but instead put her into a thriller, and not her, but a impersonator who plays her at a sleazy off-the-strip Vegas casino, is that it feels too soon to me to write a novel about her, because her ex-husband is still alive. Her children are still alive. Her grandchildren are still alive. We think Kate Middleton is still alive.
Right. Well, let's not go there. But in any case, no, I think that's true. I have a personal objection to The Crown in the sense that I don't think that you should do that to people who are still alive. It's just me. So I've never watched it, and I don't intend to watch it. But I'm perfectly happy to watch, stuff about Victoria, for example, or, Lily Langtry or George V or whatever it is. I just draw my line at doing this when people are still living. Just me,
No, it's not just you. I loved the first seasons of The Crown. But when we got to Diana, I started to feel uncomfortable.
Well,
And
I
people are
didn't
saying
like
exactly,
the idea
yeah,
for children
yeah.
watching it, which I thought was hard. But anyway, so what you're doing is you have taken this glamorous person and created a fake, so to speak. Well, not so to speak, an actual fake. And you have put her in Las Vegas, which is sort of home to fakes. Now, I don't know if any of you are opera lovers, but one of the war horses of operas called Rigoletto, and it's set in what is it, 16th century Italy, but and it involves a court jester and a duke who seduces his daughter, and it's very much of its time. The Metropolitan Opera decided that to engage a new audience, that they would move the entire thing to Las Vegas and make it contemporary, which I find I'm not up for that, but nonetheless, apparently it works for a lot of opera goers. And I thought to myself, if you were going to move Rigoletto and its plot that is anachronistic, to put it mildly, to today, Las Vegas would be the place that you would do that.
Oh, I love the idea of setting opera in Las Vegas. It's an operatic city. Everything is big. Everything is over the top. Everything is theatrical. Where else can you have a city with the Bellagio's fountains? You can have pirate ships. I mean, if any city was going to have a magician nearly killed by one of his animals, it was going to be Las Vegas.
It's kind of a grown-up Disneyland, in many respects.
It is.
Yes, no, it absolutely is. So anyway, so Diana, The Crown, Las Vegas, all played into. That's three legs for the story. Are there any more?
No. I mean, to a certain extent, there's obviously a lot about fintech and cryptocurrency. But rather like Alfred Hitchcock, I view cryptocurrency and fintech in this novel as the MacGuffin. All I needed was a reason for somebody to want to launder money at a really sleazy, off-the-strip casino. That's all I was looking for. But history was moving faster than fiction. I had a pretty tight first draft of this novel in January of 2021. But then Putin invaded Ukraine. And all of a sudden, my crime family, which was largely Russian oligarchs, felt tone deaf. I would look at Mariupol. I would look at Kyiv. I would look at Kharkiv. And I would think to myself, yeah, these jokes about Russian oligarchs no longer land. So I began to change who are the bad guys in this book. And then I hit it down, and in the summer of 2022, I thought I was pretty set. But then in the autumn, Queen Elizabeth dies. We have the FTX cryptocurrency scandal. And that's when I realized that history is moving faster than you can write. And so I decided the book is not going to be set in an amorphous present. It's set in a specific moment in time. August and September of 2022. So you see Queen Elizabeth dying. You are aware of the FTX crypto scandal. But it always came back to this. Chrissy Dowling, Princess Diana impersonator at a sleazy casino. Her sister Betsy Dowling, who comes there from Vermont with her tween daughter in tow. And the mob. As we say on the cover of the book, the princess is fake, the murders are real.
So you chose a financial pulse here to move the thriller along, right?
A little bit, yes. There are two.
It has to be a crime. I mean, it
Yeah.
isn't a crime to impersonate Diana, so we had
No.
to find a crime.
No, the crime is this. What really are the new owners of the fictional Buckingham Palace Casino up to? How much of it is really about this desire to change the Las Vegas gaming laws so that you can use crypto on a casino floor? And how much of it is about something deeper and darker and more villainous?
Ooh, really great questions. So, did you do any? I say this as a person who hosted Steve Berry, whose new book, The Atlas Maneuver, is all about this. Did you do any distinction between Bitcoin and crypto? because I always thought they were kind of the same thing, but now I've learned that they're actually not. So, can you want to explain that?
Yeah, I'm not going to explain that because I mean, Steve Barry is capable, and actually I said this in an interview, I think in the Los Angeles Times the other day. There are many great writers out there who are capable of writing a great novel about crypto. I am not among them.
It wasn't about crypto. That's my main point.
Yeah.
It was only about Bitcoin, which is not crypto.
No, of
And
course.
I have trouble with the distinction.
Yes, I created a fictional cryptocurrency for the Prince of Las Vegas. It's called, I think, Futurium. I'd have to look because that is how uninvested I was in the crypto part of this. Today is the publication date for the book, and I don't even remember the name of my fictional cryptocurrency. I think it's Futurium.
So funny.
But here's the other thing. So many of the names I came up with in 2022 and 2023 were actually names it turned out of not yet released or unbelievably small cryptocurrencies.
I love it. You know, it's the Wild West of
It is the Wild West. Kind of like Vegas was 60 years ago.
Exactly. All right. So, you've always been fascinated with putting women in difficult situations. And yet, I've known you for a while and you've been happily married for forever, so there's no revenge motif going on here. What is it that, and his wife is lovely and very talented, and, Chris is so proud of her. If you watch on Instagram and his Instagram feed, there he is. So what is it that drives you to put women into these difficult jobs? I mean, like with the Lioness, for example, and you've written about witchcraft and all kinds of things. Why women?
Well, first of all, your gender is way more interesting than my gender. I'm firmly convinced that the only reason golf was invented was so that men would talk to each other.
Never read P.G. Woodhouse, right? The Coming of Golf, one of my totally favorite short stories.
Yeah. But I do tend to put women in jeopardy, perhaps more often than I put men in jeopardy. Though in The Lioness, I was an equal gender murderer. I think as many men die in The Lioness as women. But the other thing I'll tell you is this. When my father was dying, and I was spending lots and lots of time in Florida over the last years of his life, his kid sister, my aunt, said to me, thank God, Chris, you are the daughter my brother never had. I really do often take stuff that's in me and transpose it into my female characters. For example, I had a play open at the George Street Playhouse earlier this year called The Club. And the 13-year-old girl in the play is based entirely on me. And I was always that kid after my parents' bacchanalian dinner parties on Saturday and Sunday mornings, pulling the cigarette butts out of the tumblers and discovering what kinds of booze I liked. In The Sandcastle Girls, Laura Petrosian, the granddaughter of survivors of the Armenian genocide, is me completely. That is my grandparents' house. That is my reaction to my Armenian grandparents. And while I've never been a flight attendant or a functional alcoholic, there's an awful lot of me in Cassie Bowden and how Cassie Bowden manifests the ways that she is damaged.
So you really also like different landscapes. I mean, you're not just writing about New England where you live, but you're going all over the world. Do you like to travel, or how is it that do you find a story and hit the landscape, or does the landscape suggest to you a story?
Landscape, what a great question. No one has ever asked me that. That's a great question, Barbara. The landscape suggests the story. And I've got to give a shout out because here at the Poison Pen tonight are Terry and Lynn Pierce, good friends of mine who I met last September on a river cruise between Paris and Normandy and back. And at a couple of our dinners together, we would talk about stories because Terry and Lynn have both led way more interesting lives than I have led. That is for sure. But
because you're shut up writing in a place instead of out traveling,
Anyway, so there's definitely an Agatha Christie, and Then There Were None novel waiting to be written about a very elegant Viking cruise.
So you went to Giverny.
Yes.
Did you go to see the Bayeux Tapestry? Did you stop to see that, which is wonderful? Did you go to the beaches at Normandy? Did you go to Rouen? Yep. Oh, see, I've
You know the rivers.
done all that too, right?
Yeah.
But no, I think it's fascinating,
Yeah.
north, because a lot of times people think that you should just go south from Paris towards, the Riviera, the whole bit. But the north of France is wonderful. It
It is.
really is. Normandy, I think, is especially spectacular.
You know, it is. And without wanting to digress too far from Las Vegas, I do want to talk
Not.
about
We have
Normandy.
plenty
Yeah.
of time.
My uncle was 101st Airborne, and he jumped twice. He jumped June 6th in Normandy without a scratch. Jumped in Market Garden without a scratch. He would be wounded in the Battle of the Bulge when he was in a truck being trucked into Bastogne in this third week in December 1944. So we have no pictures of him in the Army, just none. So now we go to the beaches, we go to Omaha, then we go to the American Cemetery a little bit inland. And one of the docents has this incredible app on his phone. He said, "Can you tell me your uncle's name, his serial number, and those?" And I could, because I'd gotten it before going there. And my uncle wasn't buried at that cemetery because, he lived until 1996. But this wonderful docent, using the serial number and my uncle's name, finds me a photo of him taken probably June 10th, 11th, or 12th with two of his buddies, and I've never seen my movie star uncle, because I mean, this guy was super handsome. This guy just exuded he needs to be, the star of the Easy Company. I mean, Stephen Ambrose could have recruited him, or Tom Hanks could have recruited him for the movie. But he looks like a guy who's just, spent 5 days moving, 3 miles, 4 miles inland against the Nazis.
That's a great advertisement for travel, right? Because if you didn't go places,
I never
you
would have had
might
that photo.
So I'm going to digress even further because you've made me think of it. Last time I was in Normandy, we went to Deauville, which is on the beach. Did you? Was it a stop? No, because it wouldn't have been on the river, so you probably didn't go there. But anyway, it was a very chic, kind of upper society resort. Where the French, if they weren't going to Nice and the Riviera, they would go up to Deauville to swim in the Atlantic, or no, the Channel, I guess it is, whatever it all is. So anyway, it has this beautiful boardwalk and very glamorous old-fashioned hotels, the kind where you would go to the beach and, whatever it all is. But what blew me away was that all of these boardwalks had canvas chairs, like director's chairs outside, and everyone had the name of a famous person who had sat in the, been there. So there were politicians, there were actors, there was like an entire panoply of the famous from the 1920s to the 1960s, all along Deauville, along the boardwalks. And I have photographs where, you would have a chair for, like Lauren Bacall or Cary Grant or Winston Churchill or whatever. So I don't know that, today many of us can access what those places were like. Those were a different version of Las Vegas. Deauville was in its way a different version of Las Vegas, but classier.
And in Las Vegas has changed so much.
It's a gourmet eating place.
It is.
There are so many great restaurants.
And it didn't
there.
used to. It used to be the 99-cent buffet place.
Right. They had slot machines at your table. You would go in and you would sit in a booth, and they would have a slot alongside. So while you're waiting for your hamburger and your Coke, you could. When I went to Stanford in the late 50s, that was kind of a glamorous place to go, but it was barely going. I come back to the point that Las Vegas is a relatively new city.
It is.
So it was incredibly tacky.
Do you know my favorite Las Vegas story I came across in my research for the Princess of Las Vegas? It's at the Sands Hotel. It's the mid-1960s. In the showroom is Don Adams. Get Smart. He's doing a stand-up comedy act, and I learned this story. It's about Mario Puzo. So Don Adams is doing his act, and Mario Puzo is writing a travel article about Las Vegas. He's not yet written The Godfather. He's just writing about why you want to go to Vegas. And he's at the Sands, and he hears that Don Adams is behind on his marker. He owes the casino a lot of money. But because he's the star of Get Smart, because he's the stand-up comedian icon, the pit boss doesn't feel that he can say to Don Adams, I can't extend your marker. The casino can't comp you more money. You need to pay up. Fortunately, one of the casino managers is nearby. So the pit boss goes up to the manager and says, Don Adams wants more money. What do you want me to do? And the manager says, he's phoning it in the showroom. I got this. So he puts his arm around Don Adams, walks Don Adams away from the card table, and says in a really loud voice, because you don't want to embarrass the talent in the showroom on the casino floor, he says, Don, baby, tomorrow, the links, 18 holes, maybe 27, you in? And Don Adams saying, sure, of course, this will be great. Walks him away from the crowd, and you can see they're whispering. Then he walks Don Adams back to the table, and all of the color has drained from Don Adams's face. And he gets out his checkbook, and on the floor, he starts writing a check to the pit boss. And the boss saying, no, you need to go over there. But yeah, good, go clear your marker. And when he goes away, the pit boss says to the manager, what in holy hell did you just say to Don Adams? And the manager says, I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And Mario Puzo said, I couldn't waste that in this magazine article. I knew this had longer legs than Travel and Leisure.
Isn't that great? Well, you hang out in a place like that with people like that, stories are bound to just fall into your lap, right? Right off the wall. So we have this woman, how her life is really basically dead-ended in her role as Princess Di. Why? What brought her to that point of why is she there?
Yeah. Why is Chrissy Dowling leaving a career? Why did she leave a career before the book begins as a relatively successful New York City actress, doing some pretty good stage stuff? As she tells us, she was John Mulaney's favorite Emily in Our Town. She's got a lot of guest appearances on NCIS and Law and Order. She's, fundamentally doing fine. But she's pretty damaged goods. She has some demons that are just like Lady Di's. She has the same eating disorder. She has the same need for approval, the same sense of helplessness in her profession that Diana felt in the Windsors. And so when her agent points out to her that A, you do an unbelievable British accent, B, you look like Princess Diana, what becomes a party act in the West Village becomes a one-woman tribute show that then grows to include a fictional Charles, and when the down on its heels Buckingham Palace Casino is looking for something, anything, to put in the showroom, the agent is able to book her this gig, playing Princess Diana. 2 shows a night, 5 nights a week, even comes with a cabana at the pool. Though make no mistake, this pool is not the Bellagio swimming pool. And so, subsisting on a diet of Valium, Adderall, and cannabis, she lives in her cabana during the day and brings Princess Diana to life at night. And it is a life that for her gives her equanimity and peace. And it's a pretty chill lifestyle for her, which is, of course, completely upended in the first chapter of the book when her sister from Vermont arrives with her former investment banker, hedge fund manager boyfriend, who is convinced he and his Russian friends can bring crypto to the casino floor, even if it means getting in cahoots with some really sleazy mobsters and some really sleazy politicians, of which, well, there are plenty in this world.
How'd you ever think all that up? You have a devious mind.
One of my favorite Diana quotes is this: I lead from the heart, not the head. I love that because I write from the heart, not the head. I have no idea where my books are going. I began with a really, really simple premise. In a world of tribute performers, and I've met a lot of them in Vegas, why is there no Diana? What would happen if there was a impersonator of Lady Di with her own show in a casino? What would it be like? Who would go to it? And it might not have been a thriller, but when I was thinking about her backstory, she has a family. And when I understood that, oh, her mom and dad both died tragically. What's that about? Why are she and her sister so estranged? That just got darker and darker and darker. The oldest short story in existence I ever wrote, I was 9. My mom saved it, and when she died, my dad saved it. And I'm fascinated by it because even at 9, my literary sensibility was locked in place. This is the last sentence of the oldest short story in existence I ever wrote. The dripping stopped, and the vultures had their meal. That could have been in so many of my books. And I think it's a natural that if you're going to begin with a dead princess, the book's going to get dark. Disney movies don't begin with a dead princess.
No, it's very true. So if I wanted to really reach, could I say that maybe Armenia history heritage plays something into this worldview?
Yes. Trauma, I believe, is passed along through the DNA. And I am a grandson of 2 survivors of the Armenian genocide. They lost lots of their family. Virtually every Armenian alive in the world today is a descendant of the 500,000 Armenians who are still alive in the Ottoman Empire at the end of the genocide. 1.5 million were killed. Whenever Armenians get together, try as we might, the conversation will eventually get back to the unmarked mass graves that are littered across eastern Turkey and Syria. So yes, it's entirely possible that an outwardly really happy human being has unbelievably dark demons going back to the Armenian genocide. I mean, you'd be a great therapist. My therapist and I have gone through this a lot, and he's pretty sure too that that you're a mess, Chris, at least in part, simply because you're Armenian. Which doesn't mean Armenians are a mess, because we are not. I'm really proud of being Armenian. I just mean that we all have the trauma genocide gene.
I'm trying to remember, where was that I was traveling when I took a picture of an Armenian memorial and sent it to you? I'm trying to think where I was.
Yes.
Remember? I photographed it and texted it to you because I
was
thought
it
of you.
in Canada? Was it in Toronto?
Might have been.
I think it was Toronto.
Oh yeah, no, it was Quebec.
Okay.
It was Quebec. That's right. Anyway, I'm sort of conscious because, reading an author and getting to know an author, you learn their backstory,
There's
right?
a PBS documentary right now that's great. It's called Armenia, My Home. And I'm in it, Eric Bogosian's in it, Conan Bryan's assistant, Sona Movsesian is in it, Andrea Martin is in it. And it is fundamentally a very upbeat Armenia is this beautiful country. You need to go there. We're really proud of it. Documentary. But it does also address the fact that we are all of us descendants of survivors of a genocide that most of the world still doesn't know about. A genocide that cast its long shadow as recently as September of 2023, when the Armenian Republic of Artsakh was overrun by Azerbaijan, and all 120,000 Armenians living there are gone. They all had to leave, which is the definition of ethnic cleansing and genocide. One of my favorite scholars about genocide is Stefan Idig at the University of Jerusalem. And in his book, Justifying Genocide, he talks a lot about the very direct links between the Armenian genocide and the Holocaust, and how one, to a certain extent, led to the other. As he says about the Holocaust at one point, the Holocaust might very well have happened had there not been the precedent of the Armenian genocide. But the Armenian genocide made it that much more likely. Why? Because the Ottoman Empire essentially got away with it. And there were just so many Germans in the Ottoman Empire who saw during the First World War that, oh, this is how you get rid of a minority population.
I think the Turks have still refused to recognize the genocide.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Completely.
So, yeah.
It would, I can't imagine they ever will, certainly not in my lifetime, nor is Azerbaijan. And going back to the royals and how bad they are at public relations. How bad are the Windsors at public relations? April 24th, 2015, the centennial of the start of the Armenian genocide, a day that is sacred to Armenians in Armenia and Armenians in the diaspora. There's going to be lots and lots of world leaders descending upon Yerevan, Armenia, to commemorate and memorialize the dead and the 100-year anniversary of the start of the genocide. Prince Charles had to be talked out of going to the competing event that Erdogan was putting together at Gallipoli to celebrate the Anzac Turkish post-war friendship.
Okay. we went quite a way afield there from the Princess.
We got
of
back
Las
to
Vegas.
Charles.
Yeah, no, right. So why don't we talk about for a moment your play, because that's exciting and just going on, and then maybe you could tell us what you might be working on next.
I had a play open at the George Street Playhouse. It actually closed this past Sunday. It finished its run. I was so proud of the cast and crew. It's called The Club, and I'm confident that this play will have long legs. I'm very confident there will be other productions, regional theaters, off-Broadway. It was directed by David Saint, who was the director for the world premiere plays of Spitfire Grill, Doubt, Tick, Tick, Boom. Great cast. Some of the cast coming straight from Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on Broadway, To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway, and it's about 1968. I imagine it as Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf meets Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. 3 couples on a Sunday afternoon. 2 of the couples are white. 1 of the couples is black, and the black couple discovers that afternoon that they have been blackballed from joining the Tony local New Jersey country club, and from there the carnage begins.
So what is the difference? Well, that's not a good point. What is the skill set that you bring to writing plays as opposed to being a novelist?
You ask the best questions. The thing about writing a play that makes it, for me, much easier than writing a novel is twofold. It's fundamentally dialogue, and I love writing dialogue. Secondly, all of my inadequacies, all of the things I screw up are hidden by great actors, a great director, a great set design, a beautiful score. I mean, I watched the George Street Playhouse bring the club to life, and 4 years ago, just before COVID, they brought Midwives to life, my adaptation of Midwives, and it's such a wonderful experience as a writer to see the collaboration. When I'm writing a book, I'm pretty much alone on a tightrope. When I'm writing a play, I am surrounded by people way more talented than I am.
So when you're writing a book, those things that the actors, the emotions they portray and the set design and all of that, you have to put all that into a novel, right? There's nobody there to create the backdrop, nobody there with interpreting things with like a raised eyebrow or a frown or a laugh as compared. So it's a lot more work to write a book, is it?
It is.
So
it is. I don't want to diminish what I do as a playwright, and I feel brazen calling myself a playwright because I've only written 3 plays. But I got to tell you, a first draft of a play takes me a month. A first draft of a novel takes me a year.
I've had this conversation last April with Dennis Lehane, who currently is, and Patrick was with me and Michael Carita. Patrick, do you remember that conversation? When when we were talking to Dennis about why he is not writing as many books, and a lot of the reason was that he can write a screenplay anywhere, sitting in traffic, at a restaurant, and it's a relatively short. Whereas writing a novel, he has to be so immersed in it that the whole rest of the world goes away, and his family and his children and everything suffer from that.
Wasn't Dennis's most recent book fantastic?
It was.
I love Dennis's work, but his most recent novel just destroyed me. What a great book. What a great talent
Well,
Dennis
he is
is.
a great talent, but I thought it was fascinating that he talked about, as you just said, that writing a play is, a much quicker form of storytelling. And a lot of it is the economics of not having to sketch in all those things. That it's the same for a movie. We've had a lot of conversation with people writing film scripts, and they say the same thing. On the other hand, the risk is that your story and your whatever can be hijacked by the actor or what the director or something, and then it is not exactly what you meant it to be.
What's also different for me is I can write a book with no idea where it's going. No idea. But with every play I've written, I knew exactly where it was going when I began it. I mean, I knew the play is about this. When I began The Princess of Las Vegas, I did not know how it was going to end. I did not know what the secrets were beneath the surface of the casino or the secrets beneath the surface of Chrissy Dowling or Betsy Dowling.
Well, what fun for you that you then got to plunge in
It
and
is.
excavate all that.
It is.
Right. So what are you working on now? Because I can't imagine that you haven't already finished another book.
Yeah. March 11th, 2025, you will see my new novel, and this is the first time I've ever spoken about it publicly. It's called The Jackal's Mistress. It is about a captain in the Vermont Brigade in 1864 who is rescued by a Confederate wife whose husband is in a Union POW camp, and she keeps this wounded Union soldier alive, believing in karma, you might say, hoping to get him safely across the Union lines back to Harper's Ferry. And I have to tell you, in the house tonight is a great Civil War novelist, Terry Pierce. Thundering Courage. He's written 2 incredible books about the Civil War that I just loved. And I could talk to Terry forever about bone saws. Kidding. Though I did learn a lot about bone saws for The Jackal's Mistress because it's based on an actual Vermont lieutenant named Henry Bedell, who would have a leg amputated in the Shenandoah Valley by the Union surgeons and most of a hand blown away, which is why when Sheridan's army went further south into the valley, he would be left behind because they figured he's going to die anyway.
There wasn't much in the way of trauma treatment other than amputation. Infection, traction, all those things didn't really exist. It's usually felt that plastic surgery developed from the wounds that snipers developed in the First World War, but in fact, some of that happened in the Civil War. I'm trying to remember. It's a really great novelist whose name escapes me, but I loved his books. And he wrote a whole book in which the protagonist had to wear a metal mask. Do you remember that book?
I do remember the
He
book.
was like a customs inspector or something, right? And so it actually preceded the World War II thing by a lot. But it's interesting how war wounds and war trauma have actually accelerated some of the most interesting advances in medicine, right? Penicillin.
Who lived his life, the Civil War hero, with a catheter for years and years after the war, one of the first permanent catheters ever, but Lawrence Chamberlain, the hero of Little Round Top, a governor of Maine, a university president.
Wow. Clothing was different. No, I mean, really, it's so I can see why that would fascinate you. So one of the things that's so interesting about your career is the fluidity, the time frame, the location,
Catheters.
well, right, bone saws, we could go to that. And you don't always write, sometimes it's a thriller, sometimes it's historical fiction, whatever. Have you thought about writing a memoir?
To a certain extent, I do.
Are all your books memoirs, essentially?
There are a couple. First of all, for almost 25 years, every Sunday for the Burlington Free Press Gannett paper, I wrote a column. And it was always about me, my neighbors, my family, being an idiot flatlander in Vermont. And there's a lot, I mean, that's all memoir. My books are, to a certain degree, autobiographic minutia, but I also tend to write essays whenever a book comes out about where the book came from. So if you were to Google Chris Bohjalian in the news right now, you would see some pretty recent essays I've written about why I wrote The Princess of Las Vegas and my personal connections to some of Diana's demons.
So the lawyer in me is going to ask you, have you made arrangements for your papers and other things to be archived somewhere?
Yes. And
I have this conversation with most authors because lots of authors don't think about it.
yeah, my papers are at Amherst College, where I went to school, and probably every 2 or 3 months I send them a big box of papers. But here's the irony. There are 3 books I've written which will never be published, and I've left instructions never can be published. But I should just burn them. And I can't bring myself to do it.
You're not alone in that. I can't believe how many authors have said to me that my first novel is still in a drawer, and I keep saying to them, destroy it. You know, if it really is going to be in a drawer forever.
Oh yeah, it'll be Harper Lee otherwise.
Well, yeah, exactly. You know, think about Harper Lee. If she don't, God, who was I just reading that said To Kill a Mockingbird was so extraordinary, and the book they then published was so horrible.
Because it was the first draft of To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right, you know, but anyway, that's good. I'm glad that recently the bookstores archives are going to go to a university. That's come along, and I'm really pleased about that because, you know, we've been here so long that I have all kinds of personal letters from famous authors. And you remember the book news? Any of you have been customers for really long? We used to print it up and mail it out, and so I have, you know, years worth of printed materials.
What you've done, Barbara, is remarkable. I mean, you've created a model for book selling that no one has replicated. No one. I mean, it's remarkable.
You know what? A bookstore has to serve its community, and you need to be a tourist community in order to have developed this way. And it's only recently that downtown Scottsdale's actually acquired any people who live here. You know, no, I'm serious. You know, the apartments and the condos and all. I mean, downtown Scottsdale was, you know, old town, and it was shopping and it was restaurants and all, but it wasn't a place where people lived. So in order to survive, you have to draw your customers from the people who, you know, who show up. So our marketing plan is we open the door. It's amazing how well it works.
Well
It's
done.
an almost constantly renewable resource. And do you know the best month for it? Every year, guess which month is the best month for us for marketing or for anything? We're in it. Exactly. And you know why? Because of spring training. Because spring training brings all these people here, and, you know, they're wandering around from the giant stadium, and, you know, what do we do at 4 o'clock before dinner if we don't want to drink? And go to a bookstore, right?
You know, I had completely forgotten. I have spring training programs from 1970 and 1971 from Scottsdale for the Oakland A's because my dad used to do the advertising for the Oakland A's. So they would do a lot of filming at spring training here.
Sure, you used to be able to go and pay $5 and sit on the grass, right? Now it's like $60 for a really bad seat. It's become a money-making thing. But no, seriously, it is an enormous, you know, draw every year. And so it's just, you know, if you run a business, you have to adapt to the community that you're serving. And that's our community. So I get credit for adaptability, but not for creating it.
Hey, what's the expression? Change is inevitable. Growth is optional.
Well, that's a very good one. Why don't we take questions from the audience? And let me remind you that this is indeed publication day for the Princess of Las Vegas. Although, to be fair, you've been out on the road doing 2 or 3 things ahead
Since
of time.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's very cool. But anyway, questions that, Chris, you take over.
Okay, we do have the official Princess of Las Vegas playing card swag. For whoever is brave enough to ask the first question, and I know we can't give these on Poison Pen TV, I'm sorry, but who knows? Maybe we'll save a few that we can slip in some books.
We can do that.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, in the back, what's your name?
Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi. So you talked a little bit about your Armenian background, and I know there's almost
Here, Chris, you can have mine.
always,
Oh.
almost always, an Armenian character in your books. There's also a very famous Armenian diasporan who had a heavy hand in Las Vegas for many years. So how
Yes.
does that factor into your new book?
Okay, Tammy wants to know, is there a famous Armenian with a cameo in The Princess of Las Vegas? There is, and Tammy knows who it is, Kirk Krikorian. What is Kirk Krikorian, one of the founders of some of the really biggest casinos in Las Vegas? Why is he in this book set in 2022 when he had been dead for a number of years?
There's an impersonator.
No, there's not a Kirk Krikorian impersonator. Kirk Krikorian was also, in addition to being a Vegas pioneer of sorts, he was also a pilot. That's where he really, started becoming very famous as a pilot. And I don't remember, it wasn't Bugsy Siegel. I don't remember the mobster, but he flew back on his private plane from Vegas to LA in the early 1950s, a particular mobster who would then hang himself in LA that night.
Wow. I've just remembered the name of the biggest mobster from Chicago that came here to Phoenix. He was called Gus Greenbaum, and he was eventually assassinated here by the mob, but he was the guy that was responsible for a lot of the action. How about that? Just dredged it up.
Just good for you. And great question. But yes, there can't be a Chris Bohjalian book without an Armenian character cameo, unless it's 1662 Boston. I did hear from some of my Armenian friends saying to me that you couldn't figure out any way to get an Armenian into Boston in 1662. And I said, no, there's just no way.
That's true. It really would have been a stretch.
Yes, what's your name?
Betsy.
Hi, Betsy.
So, just out of curiosity, as far as when you're doing your background in Vegas, give us an idea of how you're going around deciding where and how the location and the players fall into this. You just go rummaging around the back streets and things, or
Well, okay, it's a great question. I don't live in Las Vegas, so I have to do my homework, but a little homework goes a long way. One of the worst things you can do as a novelist is show off. Look what I know! All you need to do is make it plausible. So, I've probably been to Las Vegas 7 or 8 times in my life, and when I was researching this book, I went twice. What I needed to do most was to go to tribute shows, to see the amazing tribute performers, because some of them are so good. I did something I've never done before in a book. I took an actual thing I saw and literally said, this is the thing I saw. So I have Chrissy Dowling, my narrator for half the book, the Diana impersonator, talking about how much she loves Carpenter's legacy. The Carpenter's tribute show that I believe it is in residency now at Planet Hollywood. It is fantastic. The 2 actors who bring Karen and Richard to life are unbelievably perfect. They're not just great musicians and singers, but oh my gosh, have they done their homework. They base their show on a particular Carpenter's concert. And I've watched parts of that concert on YouTube, and it is so cool. What's wonderful to see it in person is that you're surrounded by hundreds of people who are experiencing all the feels. Like, I'm sitting next to this one couple, and, Karen Carpenter is singing We've Only Just Begun, and she's got her head on his shoulders, saying, oh, we danced, that was our first dance. And it's fantastic. So, that was the sort of things I was doing when I was researching this book that was really interesting to me. Meeting, the guy who plays Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra, the Sydney, I don't remember what they're called, the Sydney Bee Gees or the Australian Bee Gees. I love what they do. And it's really hard. And it's not just hard because you've got to be super talented. It's hard because you're a gig performer and you're performing in a city where you've got the big super headliners, you've got the Cirque shows, and then you've got to cobble it together as a Herman's Hermits cover band. It ain't glamorous, but it's fantastic. Terry! Got to give a shout out. This is the man who's written two of the best books I've ever read about the Civil War. Thank you, Terry. I'm just going back here so I'm in the camera.
Does Victoria read your drafts and give input?
Terry wants to know if my lovely bride, Victoria, reads my drafts and gives input. You bet. Victoria Bluer and I have been together. I don't say Victoria Bluer because this is on TV and I want to give her a shout out. My lovely bride and I have been together since we were 18 years old. I've written close to 4 million words, and she has read every single one of them before anyone else. Even my amazing editor, Jenny Jackson, who wrote the great novel last year, Pineapple Street, out now in paperback. And Victoria is one of those readers who I can count on for absolute honesty, which I really need. And I remember one time I was clearly pushing back against her criticism of something because she said, "Wouldn't you rather hear it from me than the New York Times?" And she's right. She's a great, smart, brilliant, wonderful editor.
And isn't she also an ace photographer?
She is. She's an immensely gifted photographer. She creates infrared black and white photographs that she then hand colors with these tiny paintbrushes she makes herself as if it's 1875. And now is digital photography makes what she does even more obsolete and rare than it was. She's becoming really talented at mixed media and collage work. And she's got more equanimity than anyone I know.
That's wonderful. Great.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm fine, and you're getting the very last deck of playing cards. And what's your name?
I'm Erin.
Hi, Aaron.
Hi, thank you. I have a picture of my kiddo holding up one of your books.
Oh.
As a tiny toddler, and you commented on Facebook, so thank you for that.
Oh, Aaron, thank you.
I have two questions for you. So first of all, you've talked about the breadth of your topics. You know, I've heard you say before you never write the same book twice. First of all, are there any topics that you won't touch? And second, my second question is, you also mentioned it takes you about a year to write a book. Do you ever participate in any writing challenges like NaNoWriMo or anything like that? A complicated relationship with that organization, but I'd love to hear what you think.
Okay, first question first. Are there any topics I wouldn't touch? If you'd asked me that question in the year 2000, the year I published a transgender love story called Transistor Radio, I would say no. But now I'm smarter and wiser and the world is different. Now there are topics I would not write about because they're topics that other people can handle better. Those are topics that I would rather somebody with more firsthand knowledge and experience and life experience took it on. We need to give room for those voices. So yeah, now there are things I would steer clear of. I've never been part of a writing challenge or a writing nano. No, thank you. Yes, I thought you that. Thank you. No, I've never done that. I put enough pressure on myself as it is. But I think they're, for the right person, they're really, really helpful. And I do set my own goals. Every day, my goal is to write 1,000 words. I don't always write 1,000 words, but I write some. And when I achieve my goal, that's great. And when I don't, I'm getting better at forgiving myself.
Maybe you could amplify if you want to grab the microphone. What is it you're talking about? Because I don't know this organization. It would be helpful.
Okay. So the one I mentioned is National Novel Writing Month. It is a nationwide group, I guess, of people who write an entire 50,000 word novel in 1 month, in November specifically. So that's just one example. There are others. I typically do something for National Poetry Month. I do a found poetry challenge, so you write a poem every day in April. Things like that. It's building constraints around it. Setting those goals. 50,000 words in a month is 1,667 words every day, so you're not far off. um, it's funny to me because as a writer myself, not that I'll ever get here, but I can write a 50,000 word novel in a month and then it'll sit there for 3 years because I'll never be able to go back and edit it. So it's like the challenge of writing it is different than the challenge of rewriting and editing and all of that. And that's the thing that I find difficult when I do a challenge like that. So.
Thanks, Aaron.
One is you actually have to write it, but two, and equally important, you have to let it go. At some point, you have to let it go, or you can't be a published novelist. And there are people who are so fearful of letting that word go out there in the world to be, that they wind up never having published.
I think it was Gabriel Garcia Marquez who said, the only reason writers publish is to stop rewriting.
That's true. And, you do have to ask yourself. I was playing, just a minor example, I was telling Chris when we were having dinner, I play Wordle just because it's a really fast word challenge, and, at my age, I want to keep my brain spinning around. And so I did my 5-letter, and the last letter was E. And then there was an A floating around. Okay, so I'm looking at that, and I thought to myself, what could this be? And you have to eliminate, I have to eliminate C and R because of my basic word. So I had a choice between, what did I say, Adobe
And abide. Abide.
Abide, that's it. So normally I would have picked Adobe because it's a more, reasonable word. Otherwise it sounds like a hymn or something, But for some reason I thought the first one, Abide, came to me first, and I thought this is how I got through SAT test. Never second guess yourself when you're going to do that. So I put in Abide, and that was the word, And I thought, Adobe is a much better word for this game. So the power of, whatever it is, that you just shouldn't ignore that. And I think that's true when you're writing. Is you have to trust your. And if you rewrite too much, that's what you lose. That's what you ruin, right? Is that
You turn a stallion into a camel, or whatever that joke is about,
That was really true. I wrote a little essay too in the book news the other day for the book I'm talking to tomorrow about immigration, and I really thought about it because we tried very hard not to be political, and and I thought this is a terrible topic, but fortunately I had a way to do it. But I wrote it, and then I rewrote it, and then I rewrote it, which is like the first time I think I've ever done that. What did I do? Oh, I turned my microphone off. Everybody missed that who's watching. I'm sorry. But, so there are times when I think you have to take extra care. But, so I think that's what's good for you doing that challenge is you set yourself a goal and, and you write it. But then you don't have to rewrite it. It'll improve you as a writer. Patrick, do we have questions from the audience?
There are just a few. Let's see. Do you speak any other languages than English? Is one. And have you spent much time in the Middle East?
Do I speak any languages other than English? No. I know about 100 words of Armenian, but there are people who question whether I can even speak English. I will say, though, I have a pretty good ear for languages. There was a 10-year period when my wife and my daughter and I spent every summer in Italy, and my Italian was usually pretty good by the end of like the third or the fourth week. Have I spent a lot of time in the Middle East? I have not. I've been to Beirut and the Armenian communities there twice. I have been to eastern Turkey, along the Syrian border and the Iranian border a number of times, visiting, again, the remnants of Armenian civilization.
Anybody else have questions?
My name is Patrick.
Hey, Patrick.
I'm fascinated by book covers. What goes into your covers, and do you have a lot of say into your
Question.
book covers? And do you always use the say?
My book covers are designed they've all been, all my books from Doubleday have been designed by a wonderful designer named John Fontana. John has designed books as disparate as The Sandcastle Girls, The Flight Attendant, and now The Princess of Las Vegas. Usually what happens is the team at Doubleday look at a lot of covers he designs. I don't know whether it's 10 or 20, and they'll usually show me maybe 3 or 4. And we'll talk about it, but it's clear that there's one that they think is really going to work. And of all of the books we've done together, I can only think of one where we really went back and forth a lot on which was the right direction. I love this cover for a lot of reasons because it screams the two things that interested me, Princess Diana and Las Vegas. So I was just thrilled with the cover. I think it's another home run for John. And Doubleday.
Was that always your title, Chris?
The Princess of Las Vegas? Yes. Yes. Sometimes my books go through many titles. For example, The Jackal's Mistress had many earlier titles. I was telling you earlier that my play was originally called Sunday 1968. Terrible title compared to The Club. And I'm not going to drop the name on television, on Poison Pen Television, who gave me the name for The Club, but you really love his movies.
No, in answer to your question, authors don't have the final word on their titles or their covers. A publisher owns a copyright to the production of the book. The author has a copyright to the story, but the publisher has the copyright to the rest of it. And therefore, they're the ones that hire the illustrators, all that kind of thing. And generally, authors do not get to choose their book narrator, although they may have auditions and get to vote for the one, that finally turns up. But authors don't go out and recruit actors as a rule to do their audiobooks, for example.
No, I'm really fortunate because my daughter's an actor. And one of the things that she's really, really good at is audiobooks. So she's narrated half or all of The Princess of Las Vegas, The Lioness, The Sleepwalker, The Flight Attendant, The Guest Room, Close Your Eyes, Hold Hands, and all of Hour of the Witch in, 1662 Elizabethan English.
That's wonderful, but that's rare.
It is. But I've said on my Instagram feed, I am the third most talented artist in a family of 3. My wife is a way better visual artist than I will ever be a writer. Our daughter, Grace Experience, is a way better actor than I will ever be a writer.
It's good you know your place.
I do know it.
Did you have a final question?
Yeah, so here's a scenario. You've got writer's block, you're sitting in their house in the winter. It's too icy and snowy to go on your bike, and your dog gives you side eye and says, "Forget it, buddy." Do you work on other projects, writing projects to take when you're hitting blocks?
Yeah, what a great question. When I have writer's block, it usually means I have not done my homework. There's something in the scene I don't understand. And so what I will do is I will pick up the phone and I will call someone who knows more about the subject than I do. That can be the medical examiner for the state of Vermont. If I need to understand in a thriller what is the condition of a body that's been in a river and maybe by a power generator turbine for months. It might be calling up a social worker who works with teens in trouble to understand why would you move this person from one foster home to another. For the Princess of Las Vegas, it often meant calling either a guy who knew a lot about cryptocurrency and could explain fintech to me, or a tribute performer to talk a little bit about her life and her residency, or in one case it was almost every writer who comes to the Poison Pen has a go-to FBI agent. In my case, it's a retired guy named Jerry Bammel. And he's wonderful. He is so smart and so courageous and so funny. But for The Flight Attendant, The Princess of Las Vegas, The Red Lotus, whenever I hit writer's block, it meant that I didn't understand what the FBI would be doing at this moment. How would they be investigating this homicide or this crime? And I'd shoot him an email, and we'd either talk on the phone or he'd email me back, and I'd be back at it.
That's an excellent question and a very nice way to end. So let's give Chris a round of applause. Thank him. And
I thank all of you. And Barbara, you are a rock star. It's such a privilege to be here.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I was going to say what a privilege it is to get to debut your book on, well, not debut it entirely, but to celebrate Publication Day with you and to talk about so many facets of your career. So if you all would like to get your book signed, you can come up to the table and take photographs, whatever you'd like to be. Is the virtual audience still with us? And if you are, thank you very much. And just be sorry you're not actually here. And
Thanks, all.
And you missed the cards on top of it. That was a very nice thing. I like the giveaway. The cards. That was very nice. Right. So, all righty. There we go. Let me grab that from you because it'll fall on the floor.